Welcome back to the Million Dollar Landscaper Podcast. Today, we're going to chat a little bit about clarifying what your team members' roles are. And this is a question that was kind of brought up after speaking to a coaching client recently. And I thought it was kind of a good thing to kind of share with everybody, not just our coaching client. And I know it's getting towards the end of the season for many of you, and there is still time to make a change in your business.
Well, this is an excellent time to think about this, because if you think about it, your team's performance and how people have been what people have been doing is pretty fresh in your mind.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so now's a good time to evaluate, because if you wait, you might forget. So to me, even though it is the end of the season, like you said, it's not like it's too late to make changes, but it's definitely a good time to document what's been going on, because it is fresh in your brain.
Yeah, and essentially the client came to us because they were just getting stressed out. They felt like they had so many things. They're trying to juggle all these different things they had, and they're like, I have these team members, they're not doing anything. So I started asking them questions of the basic stuff. Did you have a job description? Which I had for not everybody, for most people, but they were just kind of vague. They had some basic things on there, but not specifics like what you expected them to do. So I said, let's have a meeting. Let's bring all your crew leaders in. Let's bring your operations manager in, and let's sit down and talk about this. And so we did this here the other day. And I want everybody to know, yes, we're going to talk about having the crew leaders, having the operations manager. But if you're a single person, a single operator, or have only a couple of team members, we're going to get a little bit to that at the end of some things that you could do on that end. So make sure you stick around for that.
Yeah, this is applicable whether or not you have one person or a staff of 20.
Yeah, and it's just the things, if you are a solo entrepreneur or you only have one or two team members, you need to think about these things, because when you start seeing somebody that could potentially move up to be, take over that role of a crew leader, or, eventually an operations manager, what do you want them to do, and how can you set them up to win from the beginning? So this is definitely stuff that you can grow into. So again, we're just going to kind of go over some of the roles for the crew leader position, operations manager's position, and a little bit of the owner's role.
Yeah, because the problem is, if the staff isn't clear on what their roles are, there's that disconnect, because the owner's getting irritated because the staff isn't doing what they think they should be doing. But your staff might not even know that they're not doing what you think that they should be doing. So they aren't necessarily doing it to be intentional. They're not doing it to be lazy or to make you mad. They literally just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't have expectations without defining what those are first, because nobody's going to meet an expectation that has not been expressed. That's not realistic.
The other thing too, after talking to a lot of different landscapers, we've definitely found a disconnect between, it's typically like the owner's doing sales, not always, but between the sales side and the actual field position. And there's a disconnect there, and not knowing exactly what to do, or the customer said, I don't know, whatever, like to make sure you close the gate every night or whatever.
Oh, like all the information's not getting transferred?
Some of that stuff isn't getting transferred over to the crew leader, and the crew leader doesn't know about it, and then the customer gets angry, and then they call back to the homeowner, and the homeowner calls the owner, and they get all upset.
There's this little vicious cycle.
Yeah, so there's a disconnect.
Clear communications could solve a lot of those problems.
Yeah, so part of our discussion, we'll kind of mention that a little bit today, and kind of how to eliminate some of that disconnect there. So we'll start off the crew leader position, and this is a very important role. And I've actually had a couple different conversations with other clients too on having a crew leader alone. Like they asked, should we have a crew leader? They're sending out 2 to 3 crew members out together. Nobody is really defined as a role as a leader. They're just sending them out. In my opinion, there has to be somebody that is going to take control, take charge, and say, this is how we're going to do it. And just kind of be the lead. I'm not saying they're being like a dictator on things, but somebody has to be in charge and accept accountability, accept responsibility for whatever is going on there. So first off,
if nobody's in charge, like you said, there's no way to hold anyone accountable, because
Correct.
Everyone can point the finger at everybody else. They're
Correct.
like, well, I thought that they did it, and they thought we did it, and I thought that it was okay because they weren't doing it. Like, it's too easy to get into finger pointing.
Exactly. So somebody has to be the crew leader or team manager, however you want to name them. Somebody has to be in charge of those crews. So typically on that crew, that person, the crew leader, is going to be the manager. They're going to be the ones that are taking control of the job, telling crew members where they need to do, what they need to do, and making sure the job is completed, to the best of their abilities. And part of it obviously is overseeing the work, but it's also to make sure the project's staying on track. So making sure you're staying on track with the budgeted hours. So if the sales gives that team, that crew leader a set of hours that's been the job's been bid for, that is that crew leader's job to make sure that job is getting completed in those hours. And that is a crucial one. Part of their job too is writing down what supplies we're using that job. Like my mom would chase around our crew leaders if you didn't have all the information written down, on a piece of paper.
Well, you can't
document.
do job costing if you don't write it down. You can't accurately keep track of your job costs, and so somebody's got to write it down.
So one of the things we always tell, and this is what I had in the meeting, was because they're like, I just need to keep working. Well, part of your job as a crew leader is now to do this documentation, to keep track of the time, to document all the materials used, if that's your procedure or whatever, who's doing what, however you want to distinguish it. But part of your job is to do this. And I'd recommended, and this is what I told our crew leaders, stop the job, stop what you're doing 15, 20 minutes before you're ready to leave, and start writing things down and documenting all these things. That's just part of your job. The other thing too is again, a little bit of that communication where I said between the sales side and the crew leader side. One of the things that we were talking about, this particular company used software called Jobber. Most of you are familiar with it, but they use Jobber to have all the materials and stuff on there. Another solution we were talking about, because this company does use a project management tool called Asana, one I'm a huge fan of. This tool also allows you to have all this stuff on there. So example of this is having all the material they're going to be using that job. Where you're going to purchase it from. So if you have different companies you have to purchase it from, the time expectation, what equipment's planned to be using that job, notes from the homeowner, like specific things that they want done or need done, or to be careful in this area, or there's a septic tank here, or whatever it is. Those specific things need to be documented somewhere, somehow, whether it's in Jobber or Asana, a piece of paper.
Because if you think you're just going to remember it, good luck with that. I don't know about you, but I always tell myself I'm going to remember things, and then I do not. Yeah, so if it's written down somewhere, it just makes it easier to pass the information along.
Like I recall jobs that, the homeowner is very specific, very concerned about their dogs. So we put up
if you come to my house and you leave my gate open and my dog gets out, I will be livid.
So like we've been on jobs where we've taken snow fence and put a snow fencing around to contain the dogs in a certain area, and that's now their space until we can get everything all finished up. But those things, if you do not share that with your team, they don't know about it. They don't understand the importance of the dogs. So like you're talking to Katie, you find out how important the dogs are to you. That needs to be documented down somewhere. So it's, again, not to scare the person, but it's to educate and make sure they know what's going on. So they're going to make that customer happy. So again, that's just part of the things that we kind of talked about with the crew leader side of things. A couple of just quick things is I'm a huge fan of having the crew leader speak to the homeowner, to let them know what's going on, especially if you get there at the beginning of the day, whether it's texting, emailing, go knock on the door, and at the end of the day, letting know the customer, hey, we finished this up today. Tomorrow we're going to be back and start this. Whatever it is, it's part of that process and part of that communication. And
it's going to set you apart. Yeah. And it, like, from my standpoint, like I always think it's like kind of awkward and weird when you have like people working at your house, be it indoor, outdoor, or whatever. But at least if you've had some kind of touch point with the homeowner, if somebody is at home, a lot of people work from home nowadays. Mm-hmm. So if you have at least talked to whoever is home, then at least they might feel a little bit less weird and awkward. Mm-hmm. If they want to say, offer you drinks of water, or if they're like, oh gosh, I'm sorry, can you move this because I got to back my car out, or whatever, they know who to talk to. Yep. They're not just like randomly, like they know who's in charge. They know who's the point of contact.
Yeah. And I guess to that point, one thing I'd step back to even say before that is, to me, there should be some kind of introduction of that crew leader to that homeowner, some sort manner. Like we would have our salesperson go out, our estimator go out and, go introduce, like, hey, this is Katie. They're going to be a crew leader for this job. They're going to be taking over. If you have any questions, feel free to go to there.
Well, if you don't have time to do that, I think it's perfectly appropriate to just, when the crews roll up, just go knock on the front door.
But there needs to be
and
some
introduce
kind of,
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. That communication is very important. And then along the lines with the communication, at the end of the day, I personally believe there should be some kind of communication, some sort of between that crew leader and the salesperson or your operations manager of some sort, owner, whoever it is, to let them know, like, especially if it's that person's project, hey, we finished up, we were able to get this done today, but we ran into this, we'll finish that up tomorrow. There need to be some kind of communication between, again, the operations manager, whoever oversees that crew leader's position. And again, that could be just a quick phone call on the way home. It could be a text
Well, you could
message,
set that up
email,
with
whatever.
whatever works in your business.
Yep.
Like you've talked about using Asana. Maybe it's something they just enter into Asana. Maybe it's a text. Maybe it's a phone call. I think that's going to just depend on your business, on how much, like, do you want somebody calling you? If you're not, then just have them text you. If you don't even want them texting you and you know that you'll check Asana, then just have them put it somewhere like that. That's, I think, pretty customizable to whatever works for you.
And the last thing is, I'm a huge fan of having some kind of checklist. Again, that company was using Jobber, so they're trying to figure out how to set up the checklist inside of Jobber so that when they're done, they can assure like all the tools are picked up.
Like an
all the
end of day
garbage-
checklist?
Yeah, there's all the tools are picked up. All the garbage is thrown away. Everything is put in one area, whatever it is.
That's one of those little touches that's going to make a difference because I know, say you're doing work at my parents' house or my sister's house, they don't want to see your Mountain Dew bottle full of chew sitting outside. They don't care that you had Fritos with your lunch. They don't want to see your wrapper.
Yep.
I'm just, a lot of people are, I'm just saying, I know a lot of judgy people. They don't want to see your garbage laying around. I'm a little more like whatever. I don't really care, but that's because I've worked in this for so long. It doesn't bother me as much, but I know a lot of people that get real particular if you leave your stuff laying around.
Well, and the other thing with the checklist, they create that consistency. So you're always going to provide that same level of care and making sure everything's getting done the exact same time, all the time, to all your customers.
Well, and if you get in the routine of just doing it all the time, you're less likely to start forgetting things. If this is a daily thing, it's easier for it to become a routine and a habit.
Yeah.
And so
So that I mean, there's a lot to that with that role. But again, this just needs to be clarified and told to your crew leader. This is what you expect. This is what I want you to do. Now, if it's their very first day, they're probably going to forget a lot of this stuff. Make sure you document this stuff down and give it to them so they know exactly what they have to do. So the next role we kind of go over here is the operations manager. Operations manager, in my opinion, will oversee those different crew leaders. So you'll have, 3, 5 different crew leaders underneath that operations manager, possibly, that they have to oversee and making sure that the scheduling set up, and this could vary in your company, but it might be put on that operations manager to call the clients and let them know, like, hey, we'll be out there tomorrow. It could be an admin side, but however you want to distinguish it, but that needs to be done. Again, scheduling, planning, making sure the crews have everything that they need, or contacting the suppliers and making sure their deliveries are getting set on time to the crew leaders, whatever it is. But all that logistics side of things, that is what an operations manager has to do.
yeah. And until you have an operations manager, a lot of times it's the owner in doing a lot of that. So that is a nice thing that you can delegate once you have the capacity to do so.
Yeah. The other thing that an operations manager, in my opinion, should be doing is some of the training and safety side of things. So perhaps doing a 15-minute tailgate training in the morning or before the crew heads out, some expectations, what's going on great in the company, what we need to work on, whatever it is. Those types of things should be put on the operations manager. Now, I'm not saying the operations manager has to do that, like,
but you can
critically
source
do it.
the information.
Yeah,
Where do you find this?
Yeah,
if
you can
don't
give
know
it
how to do
to
it.
crew leader to go do it or whatever, but
Yeah.
somebody needs to be in charge of that. The other thing would be monitoring those jobs as far as like budgeted hours, making sure they're staying on track of the hours, supplies, make sure they're not overrunning on supplies. If you bid the job for 10 tons of stone and they're starting to get 20 tons of stone, what is going on here? We need to make sure things are staying on track. And they could also be like a problem solver. So when something goes wrong with the job, they should be one of the first contacts that crew leader is making is to that operations manager and say, hey, we ran into this concrete that's down there. We didn't know it was here. It's going to take us a little bit longer to get this dug out. Then we can start working on a change order or whatever it is. Or the customer wants to expand this bed by 10 feet. Okay, what do we need to do? Well, we need to change the bid. We need to make a change order for this, whatever it is. Or, something broke. That operations manager should be the one that's getting called and make sure they're aware of what's going on. And then the last thing I would say, I guess, for the operations manager, that there should be a communication between them and whether it's the owner, salesperson, estimator, designer, whatever, however role, there should be somebody over that person too, to make sure they're staying on track and make sure they're communicating what's going on doing the jobs. But that's again another very important role. You notice a trend here. It's a lot of communication, and that's just the way it has to be in business.
Well, and I'm not going to derail your topic here, but this is something to keep in mind when you are hiring an operations manager. Somebody who is an awesome landscaper, that doesn't mean they're going to be a good operations manager, because this job is more focused on communication, workflow, keeping things going. It's not as focused on making sure the job is getting done to expectations. That's like a crew leader. So just FYI, that's something just to keep in mind. We want to take a quick second to tell you about our friends over at Cycle CPA. I can't even express to you how important it is to have a good accountant on your side. You know you want accurate bookkeeping and financial statements every month. Instead, you're often left with limited time to focus on the accounting side of your business and no reports to show for it. At Cycle CPA, the landscaping accountants, they not only handle the bookkeeping, but also provide landscape industry benchmarking, job costing, financials by service line, advisory meetings, and much more. Cycle CPA has a team of landscaping accountants available to provide anything from bookkeeping to CFO services. Visit cyclecpa.com, and for $100 off, mention the $1 Million Landscaper podcast.
Are you tired of those spam calls about your online presence and website? I know you're nodding your head right now. Finding a company that knows the details about the lawn and landscape industry can be difficult. Well, I have a solution for you. Let me introduce you to Green Frog Web Design. We all know growing your business in our digital age requires an effective online presence, a website geared towards bringing in new customers. With fierce competition and a never-ending line of chucking the trucks ready to take your place, DIYing your online presence is not a serious option for growing businesses. Find a trustworthy and effective solution with Green Frog Web Design. Oh, and by the way, the first month for a new website is $1. Link is in the bio.
Well, to that point, the latest client that I was talking to, the operations manager actually came from the hotel field. They were operations manager at a hotel, a large hotel. So they didn't necessarily have all the knowledge of the landscaping side of things, but they knew the logistics side of things. The landscaping side, they're still learning that stuff, so there's still some education on that end. But as far as the logistics and communications, they have that down because they've been trained through many years from that other end of the field. So
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to derail you, but
so the last thing, so that was the operations manager. The last thing here is the owner's role, and this again depends on your business, how big you are, and what you do. But a lot of times the owner, I should say, is the ones that's out there usually doing the sales. They're the ones out there doing the networking and getting out there and shaking hands, kissing babies, essentially.
Yeah, you're the face of the business.
Yeah. You're going to be doing marketing. You're going to be doing, planning.
Yeah,
all
for
these
most
types
of our
things.
audience, that's what the owner's going to be doing, because most of our audience is under $2 million in revenue. Of course, once you get up, once you've got $5 million business, you might have a marketing manager. You might have someone to do all this. But if you're just starting out, if you're a smaller business, that's where the owner's going to be still have to do all that stuff.
Yeah, all the planning, all the marketing, the hiring, recruiting, all that stuff is kind of fell underneath the owner at that level where they're at. Again, like Katie said, it just depends on your business, what you have. The other thing that I'll kind of add to this that I didn't really talk about is we actually made a organizational chart for this company. We sat down and wrote out the roles, and then we actually had little post-it notes. I used a software called Miro.com. It's a free piece of software. It makes it super easy. And you can put what they called post-it notes on there. And we outlined what that particular role is. So the stuff that I talked about here today, we wrote on that post-it notes.
Well, I like the idea of the
do.
Post-its because most businesses are smaller. Like, we're giving some general guidelines on how we helped this business, but every business is going to be different.
Right.
So if you're doing it on that Miro using the Post-it notes, there might be things that get moved around. Like, you might not do it exactly like this one, but you can you could move this job to this person and this one to this person. So
So
and most people are pretty visual, and
Yeah.
so doing it in some in something like that where you can actually see it. Scott knows this. I can't think without a pen and a piece of paper in
wish
my
I could
hand.
show you the wall
And
right
I
now.
have so many Post-its stuck to the wall because I have to be able to see things. And so just FYI, even if you're not a visual person, that might help your staff if you can see it, because like I can't see anything if I don't have it written out.
The other thing that what happened, and this is why I kind of wanted to bring it up, when we did the organizational chart, we had stuff written down, obviously, for crew member, crew leader, operations manager, the owner. We had stuff for like marketing, who's in charge of marketing, sales, all this stuff. And we started putting all these different boxes that the owner actually had responsibility for. The crew leader saw this and was like, holy cow, like, they have a lot more boxes than what we thought. And they don't really think about that.
They don't know.
Yeah, they don't really have an idea. They didn't think about, oh, yeah, they got to do the financial planning. They have to do the
everyone
admin
thinks
stuff.
that the owner is just like rolling around in piles of money like Scrooge McDuck every day, but that's really not it. There's actually a lot that goes into owning your business. It is not for the weak.
So I think that was a big wake-up call for that crew leader when they saw that. Like, oh, okay, now I see why this operations manager is the person I need to go to, not to, because that was part of their issue. They had the crew leaders contacting the owner, trying to do whatever. Maybe that's the need, but at that time, no. This is the procedure we're going to put in place. The owners typically have quite a bit on their plate still, but again, do that organizational chart just even for your own sanity, see who's responsible for what. And then again, it really can open the eyes of your team members of who's doing what, who's in charge of what. So that was kind of just the basic 3 kind of elements that we talked about with that homeowner. Now, for those that are the solo entrepreneurs, or only have a couple team members, what can you do? Well, yeah, you're still going to be wearing a lot of different hats. But to me, we want to start looking at what is like a priority in your business. What is like a main issue in your business right now? So if it's whatever, communications with your customer, well, what can we do right now to do that? Or if it's getting the right information when a customer calls you for an estimate, what can we do? Can we make a list that has all the questions I want to ask so I don't forget it when I'm out in the field? Do I need to make checklists? This is a big one for us. We made super simple checklist on equipment and what tools the crews needed in the morning. My dad would check off they needed the shovels, they needed the rakes, they needed the sod cutter, whatever it was. And having that checklist was an easy thing to kind of clarify, and people started doing it
because we
themselves.
had trouble because people were waiting around in the morning because they didn't know what to put into the trucks. They didn't know what to load up because whatever job they were doing for the day hadn't been told to them, and it was not clearly defined what they were doing or what tools they needed, because all that information was just in your dad's head. So once the little checklist was made up where he could just real quick, because he had it all in his head, he could be like, get this, this, and this, then people can get moving and you don't have people just standing around. So that kind of gets back to you have to just clearly define who's supposed to be doing what and what you're supposed to be doing, because your dad's getting irritated. It's like, oh, everyone's just standing around. Nobody, they're drinking coffee and talking. Nobody's doing their stuff. And they're like, I guess I'll just stand here and drink coffee because nobody's told me what to do. So, you could just, it's, everybody's pointing fingers and getting mad at everybody else, when really clear communication can solve a lot of problems.
And then the last couple things I would suggest for the smaller companies out there is to delegate. If there's certain things that you can get off your plate and hand to somebody else, like whatever, it's taking photos of a job site or whatever, let somebody else do it that might be better at it than you, or just to get it off your hands. Whether it's changing oil, could you have a crew leader do that, or a crew member do that, or somebody else do that besides you? What can you delegate to kind of get off? And then the last thing is just kind of outsourcing some things. Maybe you want to outsource your bookkeeping, give it to somebody else. That way, your books are up to date, everything, all your numbers, and then it's up to you to collect or whatever it is. But what can you do to kind of outsource things? Another good one is the telephone. Could you hire a company to answer the phones for you? Like that's another easy one for you, because so you're not missing the phone calls and you need to get back to them at the end of the day, whatever it is. What can you do to kind of eliminate, all those things you have to deal as a owner with, So again, guys, I know we went over a lot of different things here.
Well, and this is where I encourage you, if you are stuck on this and you don't know, because some people don't know where they're stuck. I would encourage you to sign up for a coaching call with Scott, because one of his jobs is for you to show up, just barf out everything that you've got going on, and he can help you sort it out and prioritize. Because sometimes it's hard to see your business because you're so deep in it. Like, you're in the wine bottle. You can't read the label because you're in the bottle. So if you do need help sorting that out, that is something that Scott can help you with if you want to sign up for some coaching, just to get yourself sorted out a little bit.
Well, that's where we see a lot of people struggle, is they have all these things. What do I need to do first? Where do I even begin? And then they just get stuck in this thing. Oh, just forget it. I'll put it off. Well, the longer you put it off, the harder it's going to make it. So let's get something planned. Let's get a plan
but
going.
It's normal to have a hard time seeing it in your own business.
Yeah.
Because you're too deep in it. You can't see what you can't see.
The other thing that we find having these coaching calls is a little bit of that accountability, because we're going to follow up with you, making sure you're staying on track, and then is just the ability just to say it out loud and get it off your chest seems to help out a lot of people too.
The unburdening of the business owner.
Yeah, it can be lonely out there. So I get it. So
I mean, I giggle, but it's true.
It is, and there's a lot for us to do. So don't get stuck in that. I don't even know where to begin. There is a spot to begin. So
and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay. Mentors are here for a reason. It's all right. Nobody's expected to do this all on their own. That's unrealistic.
So again, just kind of a quick takeaway, just make sure that you are expressing to your team members, crew leaders, operations manager, exactly what you expect of them. I do recommend documenting things, and this could be changing over time, but we have to start somewhere and start writing things down, what you expect from them. Don't just, hey, you're going to be a crew leader today. What does that mean? If you're just giving them a hat, they don't know what they have to do with that. They don't know what to do. So.
Even if they worked for another business, that business might have operated differently or done things differently than you wanted. Yep. So because I know a lot of people are like, yes, I hired this person. They've been doing this for 15 years and they came from such and such company. They're going to solve everything. Yep. You still have to be actively involved in setting them up for success and getting them to do the right things and getting them to do what you want, because they might have learned bad habits at that other company, or the habits that they learn might not necessarily be bad. They're just not how you do it. It's your business. Yep. They can do it. A good example of this
is when I went to go work for my mentor, the guy that I looked up to.
Yes.
I went out there, and that particular day we were putting some plants in and some mulch or whatever. So I took the rake, I'm raking the mulch down and doing my thing. And he comes over, he's like, you're doing it wrong. I'm like,
you're like, what? I have spread so much mulch. What are you talking about? Yeah.
He's like, no, I expect you on your hands and knees. And I'm like, I thought he was joking. No, he was serious. He expects his crews to be on their hands and knees and spreading it by hand, not with a rake or any tool.
So at the end of the day, if you looked at what you did with the rake and what somebody did with their hands, could you tell the difference? Probably not. But that's how he wanted it done.
Yep.
So that's how you did it.
And I did it. There was no arguing. I was just like, oh,
you just didn't know.
I didn't know this. Yeah. Okay. So again, that's what your crew members, crew leaders, all these people, if they don't know, they don't know. They're going to do what they think they can do best.
Right.
So you have to explain things. You have to communicate, over-communicate. You'll never have somebody say, you've over-communicated with me.
I've literally never heard that.
Whether it's a customer, employee, whatever it is. So always communicate. So again, guys, just go start documenting, get the process started. You can make adjustments along the way, or you find that that person's not good at this, we're going to move it to somebody else. That is fine. You have to get started and do it dirty. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us today, and hope you have a great day.